What's up, fight fans? Welcome to the UFC Fight Night 127 post-fight show. My name's Flying Brian J. Thank you so very much for joining me. As always, you're going to be my co-host. My first question to you is, what post-fight rating 1 to 5 would you give this entire fight card? Before we get into talking about that, let me tell you what pre-fight rating you guys gave the fight card. If I should have pulled it up beforehand, I guess. Anyway, I'm pretty sure you guys gave the pre-fight rating a 2.7, something like that, and I gave it a straight 2.0. In the post-fight rating, this fight card was really enjoyable. I had a lot of fun watching it. I'm sure you guys did as well. And I'll give the post-fight rating, oh man, it's hard to reflect for a moment here on how exactly how much I enjoyed the card. I'm going to say a 3.75. It wasn't the greatest card in the world. There were times where the pacing, I was actually kind of annoyed by. Maybe that's because I came in with too much expectations for how the pacing would go. Oh, Jimmy Salvinson has subscribed. Thank you so much for doing that, Jimmy. I don't know if it did the animation. I don't have the animation set up on this stream, do I? I must not, so that kind of sucks. Sorry, Jimmy, you don't get a cool animation. But, so yeah, what we just watched was Fabricio Verdum getting knocked out by Alexander Volkov in the 4th round of the main event of the evening. We're going to talk about that fight. Then we'll talk about some WTFs of the card, and we'll get rolling into how the hashtag Fight Nerds did on the UFC Pick'em League, and of course how blanket betting the underdogs went. So at the very beginning of this fight, Fabricio came out with a flying sidekick like he's done many a times, like he famously did against Travis Brown. Really cool gif of that. But Alexander Volkov has trained with Fabricio before. John Gooden and Dan Hardy told us that Fabricio actually brought Volkov in to mimic Travis Brown for when Fabricio fought Travis Brown. So Volkov was wise to the flying sidekick. And he was wise to some of the other tricks that Fabricio was pulling off in this bout. After Fabricio came in with that flying sidekick, he immediately got a single and got Alexander Volkov to the ground. And I tweeted from the MMA Mania Twitter feed that Fabricio was having trouble getting past the long legs of Volkov. Volkov was keeping him solidly in his guard, inside that guard, and extending his torso so Fabricio couldn't get anywhere near him. And when Fabricio would try to get over into half guard, Volkov's legs were so long, I thought Fabricio was having a little bit of trouble doing that. Luke Thomas, of course, told me that I was wrong, that Fabricio could pass his guard whenever he wanted to. But I don't know. I mean, Luke Thomas probably knows what he's talking about more than I do, but I find it a little bit hard to believe, because if Fabricio could just cut through the guard whenever he wanted, why didn't he? Volkov did a good job, in my opinion, of keeping Fabricio at bay, really far away from him, not doing a whole lot other than just staying defensive, keeping himself safe, and then maybe peppering Fabricio with punches from the bottom, and then like the fight would stand up shortly thereafter. And on the feet, whenever the fight was on the feet, Fabricio, he would get into some wild exchanges. He'd get a little crazy going for the finish, and that's how the fight actually ended. Volkov had tagged Fabricio a couple of times. When Fabricio came in wildly, Dan Hardy was saying that Fabricio knows he's got to finish this thing here. And then Volkov uppercut Fabricio, right hand, Fabricio got him on the ground and then knocked him out cold with a little bit of ground and pound. Fun fight to watch. Actually, the most exciting parts for me actually were where Fabricio was trying to work his jiu-jitsu game. And I liked the dynamic there of how Volkov was sort of able to keep Fabricio at bay. But the diving in for single legs and then pulling to half guard, Fabricio did, and then was able to sweep Volkov a couple of times, got Volkov's back, or would end up with the fight on the ground, even if Fabricio was on his back and Volkov was in the top position. It was interesting to see how Fabricio was going in for those transitions from the striking to the grappling department. That was really, really interesting to me. Interesting fun fact going into the fight, Fabricio's 39 years old, Volkov's 29, so a 10-year age differential. If you follow Fightnomics by Reed Kuhn with Kelly Krieger, you know that anybody that's 6 years younger than their opponent has a significant chance of getting the victory according to those stats. And Volkov, of course, came out with the victory. We'll talk about what's next for him in a second. Richard Berghuse is here. What up, Richard? I like those kick catches and throwdowns. Volkov was catching Fabricio's kicks a whole bunch, and then he would just knock down Fabricio. And at first it's like, man, why does Fabricio keep doing this? And then you think Fabricio's probably doing that so that he could try to bait Volkov into coming to the ground with him. Come into my guard, come into my guard. That didn't work out for Fabricio, but it did work out for Volkov. Even if the fight was going to head to the judges, you could say that he was scoring points by knocking Fabricio down. But, we didn't go to the judges, so that was a non-issue there. What's next for Alexander Volkov? In his post-fight interview, he said that he would like to fight for the title. He doesn't care if it's Stipe Miocic or if it's Daniel Cormier. That's a possibility. Dan Hardy was adamant about wanting Alexander Volkov to fight Francis Ngannou. That is also a possibility. I was thinking that Volkov versus Curtis Razor Blades would be a good bout, but Curtis is fighting Alistair Overeem at UFC 225 in Chicago in June. I guess there's a lot of options there at the top. I wouldn't mind if Volkov waited to get a title shot, because if Volkov fights Ngannou, then what if Ngannou wins? Then we just kill a contender. So perhaps either Volkov just waits for the result of Cormier versus Miocic, in my opinion, or fights the winner of Curtis Blades versus Alistair Overeem. I want Ngannou to fight Derek Lewis, and I don't want Volkov to fight I don't want Volkov to fight Ngannou, because if Ngannou wins, then we just killed a contender, and then what? We're going to give Ngannou to Miocic or Cormier again right away when he showed that he doesn't have wrestling and needs some time to come back. Richard Berghuse says give Volkov to Kane. Can we count on Kane to do anything? He just got removed from the UFC rankings because he's been so inactive. I like the thought, Richard. I have the rankings up here. Let's look at those quickly. So, of course, Stipe's the champion. Francis is the #1 contender. Alistair Overeem, then Fabricio Verdum. Fabricio's obviously going to fall. Volkov was 7. Between Verdum and Volkov, there was Curtis Blades, Derek Lewis, and Mark Hunt. You want to give Volkov Mark Hunt? I don't think that's going to really get him anywhere close to a title shot. Doug Rowland says Volkov versus Kane and Ngannou versus Lewis. I suppose. But what I'm saying here, and I want to try to convince you guys, is I wouldn't mind if Volkov just waited for the winner of Cormier versus Miocic. That's a long wait. He might have to wait like 6 months at least to get that shot, but why not? I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about how the hashtag Fight Nerds finished on the UFC Pick'em, the MMA Mania UFC Pick'em League, the Fight Nerds League. Okay, so per the event of UFC Fight Night 127, in first place was The Perpetrator with 7 out of 10 right. Second place was Cormac, 7 out of 10 right, but not as many perfect. Third place was HL MMA, 6 out of 10. Fourth place was Educate Ignorance, 7 out of 10. And fifth place was Kevin Fitzpatrick. Wesley Riddle, he's a friend of mine, came in close at 6th place, so I figured I'd say him. And myself, I came in at 22nd place, 5 out of 10. Not good. One reason why I did so terribly is the underdogs did so phenomenally tonight. If you would have put 1 unit on every single underdog on all 10 of these fights, you would have came out with plus 9.43 units on the fucking evening. 9.43 units on the evening by putting 1 single unit on every single underdog. Good golly, Miss Molly, that is some serious shit right there. And on the year, I know you guys have asked me this many a times on like what blanket betting the underdogs has done for the year. So we came into the event minus 0.64, I believe. Hold on one second. Was that minus that? Yeah, we came into this card minus 0.64 units. So then with the 9.43 units on the night, we are now plus 8.79 units on the year by just putting $1 on every single underdog on every single fight card. That right there is nuts. It's crazy to me. A couple of the reasons why it's so huge from this event is because Paul Craig was a plus 550 underdog. He closed at that. I got him 1 hour before doing the pre-fight show at plus 520. We almost had Tyrion Ware cash as a plus 300 underdog. But then a lot of other underdogs won. Danny Henry was plus 2 something. Jan Blachowicz was the underdog. Alexander Volkov was the underdog. Charles Byrd was an even plus 100. Cajun Johnson was plus 165. Insane. That to me is insane. So I forgot, you guys didn't tell me, what post-fight rating would you give this entire fight card? Doug Rowland thinks Volkov versus the Super Samoan Mark Hunt. I mean, I guess. Let me ask you this. Who would you pick to win Volkov versus Hunt? I would pick Volkov, even though Hunt, he has a real knack for knocking out super tall dudes. Green beer. I'm drinking green beer for those of you listening to the podcast version. If you guys didn't know, Doug and Richard, two other people, you can listen to the entire show on the MMA Mania podcast feed on SoundCloud, Stitcher, anywhere you can find podcasts. After DC wins the belt, heavyweight is locked with a champ for a while, says Doug Rowland. I hope you're right. I hope Daniel Cormier wins that belt, but I just don't see it coming. Let's talk about some WTFs of the card before we get into the rest of this event, before we get into the co-main event of the evening, which was Jimmy Manuwa versus Jan Blachowicz. But we got 3 contenders for WTF of the card. Number 1 is Cajun Johnson. Cajun Johnson had Dan Hardy and John Gooden pronounce his first name Kayshawn. Kayshawn Johnson. It's spelled K-A-J-A-N, and he had him pronounce it Kayshawn. That was fucking weird. What the fuck? Then, after a split decision victory, Kayshawn Johnson scolded the crowd for booing. The fight was against Stevie Ray, and Stevie Ray was the hometown guy. They, of course, wanted him to win. A split decision, they're always going to be cheering for their hometown guy. And then Cajun Johnson told the crowd that they need to learn have some respect. It was rude of them to boo, and he said they just put on a really exciting fight and that they didn't deserve to be booed. It wasn't that fun. The fight wasn't that fun. What the fuck, Cajun Johnson? You know, you are a big proponent, or you're very for fighters unions in the UFC. You know, one thing that would help you as a bargaining chip for that would to have a lot of fans, and I feel like there's nobody in London is going to be a fan of yours now, Kayshawn Johnson. What the fuck? Okay, next thing is Leon Rocky Edwards after defeating Peter Sabota at 4:59 of the 3rd round via TKO, which that was a what the fuck stoppage. He called out Darren Till, and no, I don't want to see that. What the fuck? That was a weird call out. Dan Hardy was alluding to Leon doing that if he got the victory. He's going to call out Darren Till for the Liverpool main event. What the fuck? Why? Wouldn't it just be the weirdest career trajectory ever if Darren Till goes from whooping Donald Cerrone's ass to fighting Leon Edwards in a main event? It'd be super weird. Super weird, in my opinion. And the last WTF of the card goes to Dan Hardy he kept calling Jan Blachowicz Yannick. Maybe that's Jan's full name is Yannick. He shorts it to Yan. But nobody knows that. Wikipedia doesn't list Yannick as his real full name. They list everybody's real full name on there. Most people's, at least. And then Hardy just kept calling him that. I'm like, what the fuck? Who the fuck is Yannick? At least tell us that Yannick is Jan's full name. Jan's full name. But he never told us that. Just kept saying Yannick instead of Blachowicz. Excuse me. And just say their last names, right? Unless the last name's the same, then you can say both names or just the first names. But if we got we got Miocic versus Cormier, you don't have to say Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier every time You know, and Daniel Cormier is going for a takedown, and Stipe Miocic is going for a takedown. Just say Miocic. I know I'm guilty of doing the same thing on my pre-fight videos, but Yannick, what the fuck? What do you guys think is the WTF of the card? Doug Rowland is he's just saying this. This isn't pertaining to the WTF of the card, but I think it fits a little bit. Doug says the card overachieved. It's still hard to sell unknown fighters with good finishes if no one is watching. But what the fuck to the card? Way overachieving. It way overachieved in my opinion. I had a lot of fun during this event, and let me pull up. I believe there was just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 finishes and 3 decisions. So a fight card with 70% finishes, especially where we had very little hopes for this thing being good, is phenomenal. And then one of those decisions, in my opinion, was the clear main event of the evening. The one low spot, actually the first fight of the night wasn't that exciting. It ended in a finish, but just I would avoid that fight if I were rewatching it. Keishawn Johnson versus Stipe Ray was not that entertaining in my opinion. But the rest of the card, fantastic. Let's move to Jan Blachowicz versus Jimmy the Poster Boy Manuwa. This fight comes out and Jimmy does what he does. He did what he does. Before we get to that, Doug Rowland is saying that his WTF of the card was Volkov's ground game, or at least his ground defense. If you guys are interested in not listening to me, the UFC Fight Night 127 post-fight press conference is now live. I'm touching it right here. That's why I look like this. Anyway, so Manuwa came out and he does what we knew he would do. He's got a mean left hook, mean lead left hook. So he pressed forward. He went for that left hook. Jan Blachowicz dodged it, ducked it, moved it. Jimmy was going with some pretty good high kicks. I was surprised by those left high kicks. Even one like glanced off the back of Yannick's Blachowicz's head. Blachowicz was obviously fine because the fight went to a decision, but Manuwa showed a little diversity with some kicks there. Everything was coming with full power, but Blachowicz was doing a great job of coming out of range of that lead left hook of Manuwa's and then countering, and he hurt Jimmy Manuwa in the first round, dropped him. It looked like he was going to be able to finish him on the ground, but Manuwa got back up and then looked to clinch, and then Blachowicz, instead of looking for space to get away from Manuwa, to then just tee off on him again, keep peppering him with strikes, shake his brain a little bit more, Blachowicz decided to try to take him to the ground and win that fight with ground and pound. And then the second round came out, and Manuwa started to get the better of Blachowicz, and Manuwa definitely won that second round. In the third round, it was the whole thing was back and forth, and I was just enjoying it so much. And I thought to myself at the time, like, Brian, you need to be paying attention to these techniques used more, because we're gonna have to talk about it in the post-fight show. But I was just so enthralled in watching and enjoying the fight as a spectacle, rather than trying to remember the exact techniques used. But Blachowicz, I thought he would get the better of Manuwa with kicks, but no. When Blachowicz was getting the better of Manuwa, it was countering with his hands, which was pretty damn impressive. And Blachowicz, in the third round, he did outland Manuwa again, but what sealed the fight, in my opinion, was he got a late takedown, and he ended the fight in top position, working a little bit of ground and pound on Jimmy Manuwa. So that was big for Jan Blachowicz. Now these guys have gone to a decision twice. They are 1-1. Manuwa won the fight 3 years ago. Blachowicz won this one. And Manuwa is 38 years old. Blachowicz is 35 years old, but Manuwa is the guy that's... Manuwa's the guy that's more toward the end of his career. Doug Rowland is doing my job for me. New viewers, feel free to comment. It's an interactive show. Yeah, if anybody's here wants to talk, basically, I just will chat with you rather than saying my own thing. My focus for the show is for it to be a live experience more than a rewatchability type of deal. That's what I want to do. And this show used to be a lot more interactive, and we had a lot more discourse when it was on Facebook, but we're trying to grow the YouTube channel. Tom Duquesnoy just rolled up to the post-fight press conference. We're going to talk about him in 1 second. But first, let's talk about what's next for Jan Blachowicz, or the poster boy Manoa. I forget who tweeted it. I believe Doug Rowland thinks they could do a rubber match in Liverpool on the prelims. I don't think it would be on the prelims. I think it would be main card again, Doug. But I like the thinking. I think it was Mookie Alexander tweeted that they're going to do Jan Blachowicz versus Mauricio Shogun Rua. Just the possibility of that. Mauricio has been out for over a year now. His last victory was a TKO victory over Gian Vellante on March 17th of 2017. I wouldn't mind watching Mauricio versus Blachowicz. I wouldn't mind that at all. I also thought Blachowicz versus Glover Teixeira. That's an option. Volkan Oezdemir could use a rebound fight, but I wanted to give Volkan another wrestler so he could test himself in that department before he were to get another shot against somebody who's good at wrestling. You know, Daniel Cormier took him down, cut through him like butter, crucifix mounted him. You remember that fight, of course. But yeah, I would like Blachowicz to fight Rua. That's fine. Or Teixeira's going to fight... No. Teixeira fought Serkunov. I was going to give Teixeira to somebody else. I was going to give Teixeira to Ilir Latifi. Ilir Latifi and Jan Blachowicz have already fought once, and Blachowicz TKO'd him with a body kick and then ground and pound quite a while back now. That'd be a fun rematch to see as well. Blachowicz, he's confident in these rematches. If he were to fight Ilir Latifi again, I would watch it. But yeah, I like the idea of Blachowicz versus Mauricio Rua. Somebody gave us a thumb down. That's fine. They don't like hanging out at this show. That's completely fine. That's their opinion. Anyway, let's move on to Tom Duquesnoy versus Terrion Ware. Doug Rowland has a great question. What's going on with the 205-pound title? Is it in limbo with Daniel Cormier moving up? Also, what Mookie Alexander tweeted was... No, who tweeted this? I think it might have been Andrew the Clown Kid Lawrence from Middle Easy. Alexander Gustafsson has been talking about how Daniel Cormier is running from him and Daniel Cormier is holding up the light heavyweight division. Instead of saying things like that, and this is what the Clown Kid said, Gustafsson should be focusing on like causing enough of a stir to warrant an interim title fight. Now, Gustafsson has already defeated Glover Teixeira. I said Glover's available. But Alexander Gustafsson versus Volkan Oezdemir for an interim title would be okay, even though like I wouldn't want to see Volkan get another immediate shot at Daniel Cormier. But if there was somebody more, if there were two guys more deserving for an interim title or a title shot at all, I could definitely see us giving out an interim title while Daniel Cormier is gone. Gustafsson probably gets the next shot at Cormier if Cormier defends the 205-pound belt again, depending on what happens with him in that heavyweight title fight. But nobody else like sticks out at being deserving for a light heavyweight title shot. Ilir Latifi is Gustafsson's good buddy, so he's not gonna fight him for an interim title, right? Jimmy Manuel was the number 4, just lost to Jan Blachowicz. Eddie Stevens, Gus needs to shut up and fight more. I like watching Gustafsson fight, but he hasn't fought in a long time. It feels like he hasn't fought since May of 2017, where he knocked out Glover Teixeira. That was a while back. I would like to see him fight again, but I don't know who we're gonna put him in there against. He's already fought Jan Blachowicz. He wrestled him to a decision. I don't know. Ovin St. Preux's already fought for an interim title once, and he just got finished by Ilir Latifi. The only sensible matchup, if we were to say we're going to give an interim title, would be Gus versus Oezdemir. Doug says Glover versus Volkan and Gus versus Latifi for an interim title. I don't think Gus is going to fight Latifi. Aren't they on the same team? I believe they're the same team. And they wouldn't do that. Yeah, they wouldn't. I don't think that's happening. So yeah, I basically think that the title's in limbo. isn't it crazy to think that of the possibility of Mauricio Hua versus Alexander Gustafsson? Wouldn't you think that Gustafsson would be like minus 300 and he would probably finish Mauricio? And shouldn't Mauricio go to middleweight? Anyway, we're getting off topic a little bit. Eddie Stevens says, there are no friends if you want to fight for a world championship. Referring to Gustafsson versus Latifi. I suppose. Who would be a suitable fighter? Fuck it. Make Gustafsson versus Uzdemir. That's what makes the most sense. But the only reason I wasn't going to say that fight like to be next is because I don't want Uzdemir to get another shot at Daniel Cormier this fast. I don't want Daniel Cormier to fight at like 2 fights in a row at 205 versus Uzdemir. But I say Uzdemir versus Gustafsson. Make it happen. Let's do that. But let's talk about Tom Duquesnoy versus Terrion Ware. This is a fight that I thought Terrion Ware won. Let's look at the stats if we can. So Ware outlanded Duquesnoy 108-70. He also had 2 takedowns, and he had a minute 20 more control time. Round 1, Ware landed 8 more strikes and 1 takedown over Duquesnoy. Round 2, Ware landed nearly 30 more strikes than Duquesnoy, and one judge gave it 30-27. And then round 3, Terrion Ware 25-23 outlanded Duquesnoy by 2, but he also had 1 takedown. What the difference was in this fight was what the judges could really notice. Gus already outclassed Hua years ago. The idea of matching them up now is laughable. Eddie Stevens. I forgot about that fight completely. Anyway, what the difference was in Duquesnoy versus Ware was Duquesnoy was landing really good low kicks on Ware, and it was making Ware spin around and lift his leg up a bunch, like putting him off balance a whole bunch of times. And Ware was landing really good ripping hooks to the body. At a distance, Duquesnoy was landing powerful shots that were really noticeable, like the low kicks and things like that. In tight, Terrion Ware was working in close, good uppercuts, good ripping hooks to the body, good coming upstairs with the hook as well. And Ware was always pushing forward. It was a really close fight, and I can't fault you no matter who you scored the fight for. But I want to talk about something that means nothing. I just want to say my opinion just so somebody else hears it other than myself. If you just look at the body language as the fight went on, early on, Duquesnoy looked like the fresher guy, the guy with the more diversity, the flashier striker, the more powerful striker, and everything like that. But as the fight went on, the body language, Duquesnoy looked to be more dejected. He looked to be more tired. He looked to be more affected by the strikes of Terrion Ware. I know a lot of people were talking about the more powerful strikes were coming from Duquesnoy. Most of the powerful strikes were leg kicks. And yes, they were really powerful, but in the judging criteria, they talk about effective striking. And those leg kicks were making Terrion Ware spin around and make him change his position a little bit. But how effective they were, we could debate that, I think, because a lot of people, if they got hit by that many low kicks that made them spin around and stuff, Terrion Ware's leg, he would be nearly immobile. But they seemed to not affect him at all. So the effective striking with those low kicks, they didn't seem to damage or hinder Terrion Ware's forward movement, his forward pressure, his ability to strike at all. But Ware was not, the strikes that Ware landed did not have a lot of pop on them. And he, like I said, he landed a lot of strikes in close to the body and to the head that they're not noticeable in space. They were really tight strikes, and I'm not upset with the decision. I was a little bit hoping Terrion Ware would win to help the blanket betting of the underdogs. We ended up not needing it. Like I said, the underdog bet tonight, blanket betting the underdogs, was plus 9.43 units. But if we could have got the plus 300 underdog of Terrion Ware, we would have had like plus 13 units because we wouldn't have lost the 1 on losing him and then plus 3. So it'd be a 4-point swing to 13. That'd have been fucking crazy. Plus 4, that'd have been nuts. But the fight was close. And one thought that I had, I didn't tweet because I feel like people were really defending Duquesnoy on Twitter today, was Duquesnoy, so he's got a lot of potential. He's fun to watch. He's flashy and everything like that. He's diverse. He changed things up, going like attempting some takedowns or at least level change fakes to mix it up a little bit on Tyrion Ware. But I think his hype train has to be a little bit derailed. You know, he came in as a minus 300 favorite on Tyrion Ware. We thought he would run through him. He didn't. He just didn't look as good as how hyped he is and how much hype he came into the UFC with. So maybe he's not derailed, but I think the hype train needs to at least... It already pumped the brakes with his last loss to Cody Stamen or Staman. Like, we need to slow this thing down to an idle. That hype train is still moving, but it's slowly moving along the tracks, in my opinion. It should do that anyway. Doug Rowland agrees with me that body language told the story. Hey, if you guys haven't already, please thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel. There should be an animation that happens, but it's not working. I mean, like an animation that happens if you subscribe to the channel. But anyway, so Leon Rocky Edwards versus Peter Sabota. Early on in the first round, Leon, I have a note about this. I got to look at my notes just to make sure I got this right. Yeah. So Sabota would move forward, or he'd go for an attack, and Edwards would counter with an overhand left. And early on in the fight, very early on, he dropped Sabota, went to the ground, and then Sabota worked for some submission attacks off of his back. And it was beautiful. I thought, oh, Edwards, you don't want to go to the ground with Sabota because he's so dangerous off of his back. But then later on, as the fight went on, Sabota Edwards would take Sabota down, and then Sabota still couldn't do much with it. He would work for a Kimura to reverse position. He had it pretty close a couple of times, but then Edwards was able to ward it off and then keep the top position on Sabota. And then on the feet, same thing happened. Edwards would just go for that overhand left counter a bunch of times. I don't know if it's an overhand left or a left straight, but he did it early. He did it often. And it was coming close to landing a lot on Sabota. And then, end of the fight, he had Sabota down. Sabota started to look tired. Edwards was getting some ground and pound. And the referee was like coming close to stopping it. And I thought that Sabota was doing a decent job defending himself. And then it looked like Sabota was just going to ride out the end of the round, the end of the fight. And then the referee stopped it with 1 second to go in the bout. So from earlier, another WTF of the card we could give is there were 2 fights on this card that ended at 4:59 of round number 3. Good golly. What's next for Leon Edwards? Eddie Stevens says it should be Edwards versus Till. Man, I already put that in my WTF. I don't think that Edwards deserves Till. Mostly because I want Till to fight somebody like Colby Covington, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, something like that. I just don't think... And I said earlier, imagine the career trajectory or just like the storyline of Darren Till whooping the shit out of Donald Cowboy Cerrone, who's a huge name, and then fighting Leon Edwards next. Maybe it makes more sense in that Edwards is actually a real welterweight. He's got some grappling, which we need Darren Till to be tested in the grappling department. But, yeah, I want Till versus Covington or Wonderboy. We already know it's not going to be Jorge Masvidal because Jorge said he's not going to fight again until July or June or something. And Liverpool, UFC Liverpool is happening in May. I think it's UFC Fight Night 130. I believe that's correct. Anyway, I don't fault you for wanting that, Eddie, but that's not what I'm going to go with. Move down on the card, Charles Byrd versus John Phillips. Basically, Phillips was a hard hitter. Byrd knew that, took him down, mounted him almost immediately, and then finished the fight not long after getting him to the ground with a rear naked... Well, not long. It was a long time after getting him to the ground at 3:58 of the first round, and Charles Byrd got Phillips down immediately. It was on its way to being a 10-8 first round because I don't think Phillips landed a strike. In fact, I think we should check the... yeah, Phillips landed 1 strike and it was not significant, and that must have been off of his back. So, yeah, that was horrible. Charles Byrd was respectful in his post-fight interview, saying, you know, thank you to London for being hospitable. He liked being here. He knows that they had to boo him because Phillips was the hometown crowd's guy, but he hopes to come back someday. A great fight for Charles Byrd. Ooh, Doug Rowland says perhaps what could be next for Edwards would be Maya or somebody in the 8 to 11 range. Let's look at the rankings for welterweight. Edwards was 15. Ooh, how about somebody like... No, Neil Magny? What's Neil Magny doing? Neil Magny just defeated Carlos Condit. What's Gunnar Nelson up to? How about Leon versus Gunnar Nelson? Or how about Leon waits for Masvidal in June or July, or whenever Masvidal wanted that bout to take place? All I know is I want Darren Till versus Colby Covington or Stephen Thompson. Maybe even Robbie Lawler. But I want Till to move way up. I don't want Till fighting backward. Edwards has already fought Usman. Edwards versus Ponzinibbio sounds great. Yeah. 14 days and counting until Habib the Eagle Nurmagomedov versus Tony motherfucking Ferguson, and Ioane and Jacek versus Thug Rose 2. It's Doug Rowland's excitement. I'm just trying to convey it a little bit. Dougie R thinks that Ferguson's gonna tap Habib. I'm picking Habib. Let's run through some results. Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts versus Oliver Enkamp. I believe it was a left-hand shot? Let me Instagram this. Yeah, it was a left-hand shot from Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts that spun Oliver Enkamp to the ground and finished him. Oliver Enkamp got hurt a couple of times by that left hand from Danny Roberts. Big performance from Roberts. What's next for him? I have no idea. Most of the time on these earlier fights, the prelims, I don't even pay attention to what's next for these guys. Doug Rowland thinks that Habib's going to get darsed by Tony Ferguson. Anywho, let's just run through these results. How long have we been here? Over a half hour? All right. Danny Henry versus Hakeem Dawodu. Submission via guillotine choke. Danny Henry. Do I have notes about this one? Yeah. A huge right hand rocked and briefly dropped Dawodu, and then Henry snagged up a guillotine, searched for it for a bit. They went to the ground. Dawodu tried to pick him up to get out of it, and then Henry sunk in the guillotine while Dawodu was on the feet, basically. Went to sleep, and it looked like the finish happened on the ground, but Henry basically got the guillotine standing, then on the ground, then standing again, finished him standing. Big performance from Danny Henry. That was a really fun fight. Early finish. I like that a lot. Paul the Bear Jew Craig versus Magomed Ankalaev. Ankalaev dominated Paul Craig for the majority of the fight. On the feet, he had the harder strikes. He had big, powerful takedowns. He seemed to be able to control Paul Craig on the ground like nothing. In the post-fight interview, after Paul Craig finished Ankalaev with a triangle choke like Anderson Silva did on Chael P. Sonnen with less than 1 second to go in the fight, Paul Craig said he heard the 10-second clapper, clap, clap. And he's like, you know what? Fuck it. We might as well throw up a submission. And he got it. And I thought, there's no way Ankalaev's going to tap. He's just going to ride this thing out. There's less than 10 seconds to go. Fight's going to be over. But Ankalaev tapped with 1 second to go in the fight. And Paul Craig cashed as a closing plus 550 underdog. Good gosh. That was a fun moment. I talked some smack about Paul Craig before. He's not the greatest fighter, but he's pulled off a couple of those submissions. Didn't he pull off some submission like that against Frankenstein, Frank Waston, Da Silva? And then 1 second to go tonight, he got that triangle choke victory. Amazing. I'm looking forward to Ankalaev fighting again in the UFC. I think he has potential. He's a big, strong Russian guy with good wrestling, and he's powerful. But that was... Like I said, I tweeted that I had tingles from Paul Craig's finish that late. That was fun. That was a fun fucking moment. Lightweight fight. Cajun Johnson defeated Stevie Ray via split decision. Cajun Johnson, you know, he does the Elias Theodoro thing where he basically like backs away in circles for a long, long time. Sometimes he counters. You know, I don't remember the fight too much. In the first fight of the night, Dmitry Sosnowski defeated Mark Godby a rear naked choke. Nothing happened until he got that rear naked choke, so nothing really to talk about. Guys, what are your post-fight bonuses, fight of the night and performance bonuses? Doug Rowland, who's basically being my co-host tonight, thanks Doug for the help, says that his buddy saw the tap from Paul Craig and Magomed Ankalaev and said that he was paid off. For a second there, I thought something was a little bit goofy. I had somebody on my Facebook talking about the UMBC beating Virginia yesterday and how Virginia didn't play defense at all the whole game, and they think that it was rigged. And I was like, I don't know about it. But that hit my brain right away as well when Paul Craig tapped. But I was like, well, fuck it. Maybe Ankalaev's just not that tough. He's strong, he's athletic, he's a monster, but he's just not that mentally tough or something. He's from Dagestan, so certainly he's super tough. I don't know how he doesn't let him go to sleep instead, but you know, I'm just being a keyboard warrior, so who the fuck knows. So guys, what are your post-fight bonuses? Fight of the night and performance bonuses. My guess for performance bonuses, we're going to go to Jan Blachowicz and Tom Duquesnoy. I think both of those are wrong. And my guess for fight of the night was it Edwards versus Sabota? Might have been for Sabota. Eddie Stevens' fight of the night was Jan versus Jimmy, and performance goes to Drago Volkov. What's your other performance? Gonna give it to Paul Craig for his last-second submission over Magomed Ankalaev, or Leon Rocky Edwards for his last-second TKO over Peter Sabota? Both, you know, I would say both are fine. But I'm with you. I think everybody's going to agree that fight of the night was Jan Blachowicz versus Jimmy, the poster boy Manoa. It was fun, back-and-forth action, ebbs, flows, both guys hurting each other. Jimmy Manoa getting hurt early and coming back from it. One guy won one round, one guy won the second round, and then the third round was super tight until the very end. There was blood, there was people losing consciousness for brief moments. It had everything you could possibly want in a light heavyweight fight of the night 3-rounder. So absolutely Jan Blachowicz versus Jimmy Manoa, fight of the night. I wouldn't mind watching that fight happen again if they want to do that. Run it right back. Performance bonuses for me go to Volkov. Anytime you get a finish in the main event, I think you're going to get a performance bonus. And it was a big finish. He came in as the underdog against the former champion, Fabricio Verdum. He got a knockout after surviving on the ground with the incredibly meticulous and just all-around good, I can't think of a better word than that, skilled, talented BJJ player and Fabricio Verdum. Amazing performance from Alexander Volkov. He definitely gets an extra $50K. The other performance bonus I'm going to give is to Paul Craig for his last-second finish over Magomed Ankalaev. If you didn't know, I'm an Anderson Silva fan. He's my favorite fighter of all time. And if you pull off that last-second or late-ditch effort triangle choke victory where the person doesn't look like the person should... Oh, later, Richard. Where it doesn't look like the person should tap? Yeah, I'm giving Paul Craig an extra $50,000. And then, because you know that we're not actually giving anybody an extra $50,000. In fact, I'm not even giving them $1. Why not give another extra $50,000 just because it's fun? And I would give my other performance bonus to Charles Byrd. You know, he was just an even 100 underdog, but he came in there and he like 10-8'd before getting a submission via rear naked choke over John Phillips in his UFC debut. So debutants are often the guys that need the money most. So my fifth bonus, my fifth $50,000, excuse me, sorry guys, would go to Charles Byrd. So in summary, Volkov, Blachowicz, Manoa, Byrd, and Paul the Bear Jew Craig. Eddie Stevens says his other performance goes to Craig as well. Doug Rowland says Volkov gets a bonus, and the last second tap by Craig gets a bonus, and Manoa versus Blachowicz. Paul Craig gets the last second tap. And then Manuel versus Blachowicz is the fight of the night for him. So I think we all agree, even though there were a lot of finishes, 7 finishes on this card, we all agree on the post-fight bonuses. So that's pretty fucking awesome. And my post-fight rating, again, was I'm going to give it a 4. Exciting fight card. It is 7:30 my time, which means I get to go out and enjoy this evening if I want to, or at very least get to spend some time with my fiance. I'm really looking forward to that as well. So that's the show, guys. Thanks for being here. We'll be here for every single UFC event, doing a pre-fight show and a post-fight show. So if you haven't already, please thumb the video up and subscribe to the channel. And if next time you don't catch the show live, you can listen to it on the MMA Mania podcast feed, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and all that jazz. Doug Rowland says that I should do a show during the card. I'm honestly in talks about doing that with my bosses right now, but it's not something that I'm just going to add willy-nilly. It's in the pipeline, Doug, that I might do that for every single card, just to talk about the card with you guys while it's happening, or if it's a pay-per-view, I can give you guys the best play-by-play I can possibly muster, so that you don't have to pay the $60, $65 if it's a shitty little card, and you can keep up with the action. Because even though I know you guys could find on an illegal stream, but I know those are choppy and jumpy sometimes. So if I could keep you informed and also keep you away from doing something illegal, I would do that as well. But that's in the pipeline. I appreciate you guys for being here. Richard Berghughes, always a good time. Leon Deere, 4th, thanks for being here. Doug Rowland, appreciate you. Eddie Stevens, you're the man as well. And I'll see you guys... Man, the next card is not for 2 weeks, 14 days, as Doug Rowland said earlier. We'll be talking about UFC 223, Khabib versus Tony Ferguson. It's finally going to happen, I hope. I think this is the 4th or the 5th time it's been scheduled, so let's fucking hope it actually goes through. And Rose Namajunas versus Yanni and Jacek, the rematch. I think Rose is going to get it again. But anyway, guys, I'm out of here. Have a nice evening. If you drink, don't drive. Get an Uber or some shit like that. Be safe. I'll see you guys later. Namaste, and cheers. I got a lot of love for you guys. I appreciate you. Later, dudes.